Hello there, compliments of the season and a warm welcome to the last edition of Channels Beam in the year 2022. Now today on the show we will be looking back at what transpired in the year in the tech ecosystem. We will focus on major happenings from the NITDA Code of Practice, the Startup Nigeria Bill, which has now become an act, the controversial takeover of Twitter by Elon Musk, the launch of a 5G network, as well as the expected rollout of SpaceX by Elon Musk's company, and how tech companies reacted to the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, amongst others. But before we start, let's take a look at the social media trends in the past week.
Christians in Nigeria joined their counterparts around the world to celebrate Christmas in commemoration of the birth of Jesus Christ. Families and friends spend time with each other, attending special events, traveling and sharing gifts among themselves, while worship centers focus their sermons on the teachings and virtues of Jesus Christ. However, it was a sad day for the Rahim family as Mrs. Omobolanle Rahim lost her life while in a car around the Ajah axis of Lagos State after she was allegedly shot by a police officer who was attached to the Ajiwe police station. This put a sour taste on the celebration of many as they took to their handles to call for the prosecution of the officer and also reform the Niger police force.
Well, there you go. A sad taste in the mouths of the Rahim family. We do give our hearts to them in this time of grief. But moving on, we've been joined by Victor Ekwalo. He is an entrepreneur, consultant, and technology analyst in the African tech and startup ecosystem. He joins us via Zoom from Lagos. We also have with us Farouk Mohammed. He is a tech enthusiast. He's the founder and editor-in-chief of news platform OK.ng, based in Lagos, with a strong passion for staying up to date on the latest advancements in the tech industry. It's a pleasure to have you both on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed. Well, Victor, kickstart first of all, compliments of the season. Merry Christmas to you both. But kickstart the conversation for us, Victor. I pretty much had just a list of things that happened during the year in the tech ecosystem. You could expatiate on some of those that I mentioned. You could mention some as well. But what's most importantly, what was the impact of all of this, on the ecosystem?
To a very large extent, I feel like we've made much progress as an ecosystem in Nigeria, and it's been commendable. So there are these periods of time, this inflection periods of time when it feels like things aren't going great, but we have made a lot of progress. And one of the biggest things that have happened this year for me has been the launch of the 5G network. Now, interestingly, when it was announced, when the telco announced that they were launching 5G and whatnot, I was a bit skeptical. I went online, I made some posts like, we don't have infrastructure for this and all that kind of conversation, which is valid, to be very honest. But on the other hand, it is a positive marker for development in terms of internet penetration in Nigeria. Because at the end of the day, when you think about it, all these things we talk about, tech ecosystem, startup and innovations, other areas of technology will not be possible without having functional internet, which is one of the problems that the Nigerian technology and innovation sector has. So the launch of 5G has been very instrumental, even though it happened towards the end of the year, even though I'm still skeptical of the infrastructure and everything happening there. And recently, Elon Musk's Starlink came to Nigeria too. And I think about it from the perspective that the more internet providers we have that are able to offer competition, the more quality we have. Because one of the biggest problems with the telco and ISP space in Nigeria, telecommunication providers, is a lack of competition to a very large extent. There are very few players. So the more options we have, the more players we have, the better for everybody.
Well, like they say, the more the merrier. But let me get Farouk, indeed. Let me get Farouk's take on some of the things that happened and what stood out for him, in the course of the year. Farouk.
Yeah, so this year has been progressive in the tech industry. as Victor said, if we look at the 5G network coming to Nigeria and the way it's, we already have several stations where people are already connecting to it. Like MTN is actually doing a good job in that aspect, being one of the pioneers of 5G in Nigeria. So also the Twitter takeover, though it led to some layoffs and some expansion deficits in the whole ecosystem, but we are looking forward to see what Elon Musk have for us, like in the Twitter, what he's going to do different with what has been, and Twitter has been showing in the like since its inception.
Yeah, very much. That was quite a controversial one. But the NSB, now NSA, that's the Nigerian Startup Bill. Victor talked about, innovation, and startups and all of that. And then thankfully, this year, the Nigerian Startup Act, came into being. How is that going to change everything? So much has been said, but how optimistic are you that the document will be implemented to the letter?
Yeah, I just hope the implementation of the startup bill will be done like swiftly, like because we have a lot of startups in this country. The startups they have actually done brought solutions to a lot of problems in the Nigerian tech community, and I hope with the passage of this bill, we'll get to see more startups coming up and also providing solutions to a lot of problems we have currently in the country.
Yeah, that's actually the hope. But Victor, let me also get your thoughts, on the implementation. One thing that we always have in this country is beautiful documents being written, ecosystem players being invited, to sit down and pretty much talk about their problems, and all of that is documented. But this time around, do you think things will be different, especially since it's a tech ecosystem which has been making so much headway and making so much difference in the country?
I hope so. That's all I can say. I don't know for a fact, because if we can't be pessimistic, with these things we're doing with startups and innovation, we have to be as optimistic as can be. We have to give government credits as we're due, because the fact that this bill has been passed, the fact that this bill was formulated and seen through, is a miracle in itself. It's progress, and I give the government kudos. In terms of implementation, it's all good intentions, and good intentions don't matter in the grand scheme of things if they are not actionable. For the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of, 5 years more like, we've seen a lot of active participation, or more aptly, active, involvement, that's the word, of government in the startup and innovation space in Nigeria. Now, have this panned out for ease of doing business in the country, for startups, for small businesses, for scaling things up? It's still very arguable to a very large extent, because there is a lot of good intentions. I remember during the pandemic, there was a committee that was set up by the government, and this was 2020 into 2021, and it was supposed to ease the environment for businesses and all that kind of stuff. And that didn't go great in terms of implementation. And in the past, there's been a lot of that. And a lot of people are skeptical about the implementation of this bill. And on the other hand, I say I am optimistic, and we have to remain optimistic. And I give them kudos for it happening at all in the first instance. But in terms of its implementation, we will all do our part as players in the ecosystem. Farouk here is, a media practitioner. He works in the space. I work in the space. We all do our part to make things actionable at the end of the day, push the government, prod the government, help in any way we can. So these town halls we talk about, these conversations we talk about, that always look like nothing come out of them. If this is what it takes for this bill to be implemented, we will have to follow through. And very importantly, be optimistic that it happens.
Yeah, well, optimism. I'd have to say that I share in your optimism, as well as Mohammed's. So it's a good thing we started talking about, what the government did, with the SNB. But one of the documents that was put out by the government, again, that rocked the tech ecosystem boat, was the NITDA Code of Practice. I mean, there was so much furore, so much back and forth about it. It was now later called a draft, which would would be open for contributions by the public. But what was your reaction, when that draft came out?
With a lot of government involvement in this space, there is good intention, like I mentioned earlier. A lot of it is good intention. And I'm not of the school of thought that government should not be involved in the innovation space, right? To a very large extent, this is a space that human beings play in, and there has to be some sort of guiding, rail. And this is where innovation this is where regulation, comes into play. This is where regulators come into play. But the regulators in Nigeria have had a history of ill-implemented regulations, ill-implemented laws, ill-implemented bills, and all that kind of thing. Now, this code of practice bill, to very large extent, when I saw it, it felt like a double-edged sword, because it's something that would work for consumer or users. It's something that will protect people on the internet. It's something that will make the internet safe for usage, for business. I'm going to give you a very practicable example, right? To a very large extent, social commerce has permeated the digital space in Nigeria. Everybody shops on Instagram. Everybody shops online. There's an Instagram vendor that you have patronized or you will patronize in the near future, right? And this means that this has become very much integral to commerce in the country. But on the other hand, everybody knows somebody that has been defrauded by an Instagram vendor or a digital store or shop. Just last week, a friend posted something. He's like, she's lost a ton of money to a vendor that she tried to buy a dress from and something. Now, these are the kind of things that this code of practice bill or this draft is supposed to check, right? So it's supposed to be a good thing. Tech platforms, with the proliferation of tech, of digital platforms, there's a lot of people that come and end up defrauding users, right? These things are supposed to check all those things. But if that's one side of it, on the other hand, again, you have a lot of provisions of this draft that seem almost draconian, right? Now, when government says a lot of things in this law drafts, I kind of wonder, do you know what a startup looks like? You're like, pay this tax, get this licensing officer. You're talking to a startup with 5 people. Who is going to be the licensing officer between, the government and the company? A lot of things there are not feasible. A lot of things are kind of stifling, right? And again, to be balanced, to not be overtly critical, I think that it needs a lot more work. It needs to be practicable. It needs to be more practicable, right? It needs to be more feasible, as it's not directed at. So it's when you're talking about the innovation and startups, you're talking about small companies. You're talking about companies that don't have a lot of bandwidth to deal with, all this accommodation. The wherewithal, money, people, manpower, and all that kind of stuff. So this draft should be tinkered with to accommodate this set of people more than it currently is. That's my take. I feel like it can be a good thing in the grand scheme of things, but currently it's still not feasible for the audience it's directed at.
All right, so, talking about, staff strength, the money and all of that. I mean, on a daily, we hear announcements, we hear startups make announcements, of funds, or grants, so to speak now, that they get either from, investors, so I think the government thinks this money is there, like these startups actually have this money, and perhaps that could be, why we have all of those taxations, multiple taxations, and all of that. I'll get to you, to speak more on that, but let's just hold on for a bit. We'll take a break and we'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have with us our panelists joining us via Zoom from Lagos, Victor Ekwalo, as well as Farouk Mohammed. Well, just before we went on break, we were talking about how much grants tech startups are getting, in the tech ecosystem. Farouk, just before we get Victor to speak to some of these things, how well did startups do this year in terms of getting funding from within and abroad?
I think the startups have gotten a lot of funding this year. I think a lot of investors are getting they are more interested in startups this year with the way we've seen several funding from investors. So, but I hope more fundings will be seen from those investors, as we have a lot of startups that needs funding. Example, I have a internet business that I know of, which needs startup SkyPro Internet Limited, and also others. But I feel a platform needs to be created for where those startups come to like show off what they are going to offer, and also with that, that will kind of give what they call a platform for those startups to showcase what they have, and also with that, it will now give the startups,
investors the confidence.
It will not give, yes, the confidence to show off what they have, and also it will be very easy to kind of connect the startups and the investors. I think that platform needs to be up.
Yeah, let's hope that happens. But Victor, let me come back to you now. Speaking to, perhaps the reason why, you have the issue of double taxation or multiple taxation in some instances, by the government on the tech startups. Like you said, a lot of startups got funding this year. However, he thinks more need to get more funding as well. So, but just juxtapose both sides and, and tell us what you think.
Faruk is right to a very large extent. There's always need for more funding, especially for startups in developing countries, Nigeria, for instance. There's not always enough money. Startups need more money. People need to get funding. There are a lot of people building amazing stuff that do not have access to funding because they don't know somebody, because they are still very much granular. Now, the work is happening, but access to funding is something that definitely needs to be fixed, and looked at. Now, for the government side of things, to a very large extent, it's a very interesting conversation you have, because this is a problem that most startup founders have across the world. For the uninitiated, you hear that X startup has raised $3 million. And this is the problem across the world. It's not just a Nigerian problem. And their friends and family are like, oh, this person is the CEO of X startup, so by extension, this person is rich, this person buy me a car or something. But truth is, this money does not belong to the person. This is the money for the business, right? And in most cases with tech startups, they usually do not get all that money at once. It's money that has either been gotten over a period of time, or is money that is being released by the investor or investors in tranches, like slowly it's coming. So at the time that this announcement has been made, this money that, remember, is the company's money, is not fully in the bank. They don't have 3 million sitting in the bank somewhere. And even if they did, it's not money to blow. It's not money for extravagance. It's business money. It's called runway. So the money is literally supposed to fix your overhead costs for the next 24 months. Or the next 12 months until you become profitable or you make revenue. Now, with this context, it is, like I said, the uninitiated will think that this money belongs to this CEO or this individual or this person. Considering how much the government has engaged with the startup space, the innovation space in Nigeria, I would not label them uninitiated. Because if the government doesn't know by now that a startup raising $5 million does not equal to the startup having $5 million, then this is the most basic thing. If they don't know this by now, I wonder what's the essence of all the engagement? This is the most basic thing that can be said. So if you're saying that, if all this stagnation is happening because they believe the startups have money somewhere, it begs the question of the point of the so-called engagement, right? Now, it's okay to tax. Nigeria is one of the places that taxation infrastructure isn't great. People don't pay enough taxes. That's great. But a company or an organization or a sector should not be taxed because it is believed that they have money. and money that does not exist, money that is not to, pay this outrageous tax and everything. I feel like to a very large extent, especially from the taxation aspect of things, startups need more tax breaks. They need more incentivization. It currently happens. Again, this is me giving kudos to the government, in Nigeria.
Because I was gonna say, isn't that what the NSA is going to do?
Yes, it currently happens. I mean, minus the NSA, there's like here and there is all that provision for small businesses and startups. It currently exists, but there should be more happening in that space. There should be less of, this, I dare say, extortion happening because you believe that these startups have money, because they don't have money. So statistically, what figures read in 2022 so far, startups have raised, more than $500 million in Nigerian startups. This looks great on paper, but again, by the definition of things, it doesn't mean that startups in Nigeria have $500 million sitting there in a Nigerian bank or sitting there in an account waiting to be spent or blown. So yeah, it's something that should be balanced out.
Yeah, let me push that question to Farouk. Farouk, how do we balance this out? Do we need more engagements? Do we need more documents or more town halls? How can that balance be struck?
Yes, I think to be honest, I won't blame the government. I won't also blame the startups, but I think the startups need to kind of bring out more information for the public to get to understand that this fund is for so purpose, and it's not like it's meant for the CEO. It's actually meant for growing of that startup
company. Yeah.
So I think, of that company. Yeah. So also the government needs to understand that. I think the startups are not kind of bringing giving more information to the government. So the government always sees them like as if everything is fine. Since they have funding from so angle, so everything is fine. So I think, as you said, the town halls and more publicity in that aspect needs to be done.
Well, we can't wait for that to happen. I mean, it's just rounding off 2022, which, I mean, by another 3-4 days, the year would come to an end. So hopefully in 2023 we might see that. But projections, what would you think, or what do you think would be happening, come 2023 in the system? What would you like to see?
I see more positive kind of inputs from the startups, and also with the signing of the startup bill, we'll actually see more. I just hope for the implementations to be done as we are looking forward to the government, because everything is done on this end, on that's the legalization of the bill and everything. So it's just the implementation which we are looking forward to the government to see what they can do. And also, we are close to an election. So we hope the next president or the next government coming in will focus on those implementation and do them very fast.
Well, let's hope that happens. Victor, what's your projection, and what else would you want to see in the year 2023?
In 2023, I believe for Nigeria's tech and innovation space, there's going to be a lot of diversification from fintech. There's going to be more fintech, not less fintech startup, but more, diversified product, services, innovation outside fintech. Recently, I almost forgot to mention that the Nigerian government signed the Artemis Accord with NASA. And this literally, they signed, with Rwanda, and this literally puts them on this literally makes, them get into the accord with, I think it's 23 or 24 other countries, to basically make space exploration more safer, to make it more accessible and all that kind of thing. So going forward, we will see more investment into that space. Will Nigeria go to space in 2023 or 2025? I don't know. I don't think so. But definitely there's going to be more investment into that space, diversification away from fintech and into other aspects of innovation, right? For startups funding, there's going to be a little bit of crunch in the beginning of the year. thanks to the global economy that's going haywire at the moment. It's going to be a bit of funding crunch. Startups are going to have to run leaner and just be more focused on their core propositions. There's going to be better, foreign infrastructure. And this is not just in terms of funding. We're going to see more like mergers and acquisitions, collaborations. We're going to see startups from Nigeria going to establish in Europe and other countries. It's already happening. It's already begun, and it's going to accelerate more. And I'm also very much excited by the Nigeria Startup Bill. I can't lie. It's something that I have high hopes for. It's one of those things where it's like...
Yeah, like you said, you have high hopes for it.
Shoot for the stars.
Yeah. So let's hope the implementation, we get the implementation right, when the time comes. But
yes.
I wish we could go on and on. I have to say thank you at this point. So I think this is a good note, to hold the conversation. Victor Ekwalo, you joined us via Zoom, technology consultant and analyst, as well as Farouk Mohammed, also joining us via Zoom, editor-in-chief of OK.ng. Thanks, guys, for joining us on the last edition of the show. Hopefully, we come back in 2023 with greater news than we had this year. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us. Cheers.
Thank you.
Of course, sure. Well, that's the show for the year. Thank you so very much for being a part of the show throughout the year. And of course, see you next year. I'm Victor Mathias. Bye for now.